For some, gambling delivers a thrill, a bit of fun, but there can also be something more troubling, a relationship between gambling and loneliness. Joining us now for more on the risks and the responsibilities for the province that runs much of the gaming, Brenda Teasel. She's problem gambling therapist and trainer at CAMH's Gambling Institute of Ontario, and Dr. Bruce Ballon, Associate Professor of Public Health and Psychiatry at the University of Toronto. Good to have you two here for this rather disturbing subject. I want to know, Bruce, first off with you, the people that come into your office seeking help for their gambling addictions, what percentage of those folks do you think are lonely?
Well, a great deal. I would say the majority of them are. It's a common factor that people with addictions and with gambling especially start to gravitate towards doing certain behaviors that isolate them. So for example, they become more deceptive with their family and so on. We're talking about people who have problem gambling. Those are the ones who come see me, not the people who just gamble for fun. And because of the behaviors, often they will go into gambling establishments. And it's like, you remember Cheers, and I hope I'm not dating myself, everyone knows your name, but really no one's really there to be friends, they're all there to drink together. A lot of people go to gamble together, so there's still the feeling of isolation, but people like to fool themselves into feeling, I'm with a community. And so over time, if they start losing money and so on, they start keeping secrets from their family, or their friends, their business, and so that creates even more isolation. So it becomes a very common factor.
Does loneliness in particular promote this kind of risky behavior in your view?
It can be a risk factor. There's no doubt that loneliness is a vulnerability factor for somebody to gamble, and particularly even on gambling online. So, I think also in conjunction with loneliness, there's also aspects of boredom that can also make people very vulnerable.
Those are two different things though, right? Boredom is something probably everybody experiences once in a little while. Loneliness is different though, and I wonder, do the feelings of loneliness go away when you're in the thick of problem gambling and you think you're on a roll or whatever?
Absolutely.
It does?
Yeah.
So that's why they do it?
Well, and partly is, if somebody is feeling lonely, definitely loneliness is part of negative feelings. And so one of the things when we look at people who develop a gambling problem, negative feelings is one of the things that they will go gamble, and that becomes a way of coping with those negative feelings. So if somebody is extremely lonely, they go and they gamble and they're feeling that euphoria, they're feeling excitement, they feel a sense of, like Bruce was saying, a sense of community, even though they don't have to talk to somebody, then yeah, do it again, right? I mean, it's a way of, like anything, if you find something that's a way of coping with a problem, with a behavior that you're not comfortable with, or with a feeling that you're not comfortable with, then it definitely puts you at risk of developing a problem.
So it works for how long?
Well, as long as they can keep it going. See, here's the situation too, because I just wanted to mention people who have problems with the gambling and the loneliness. There might be other issues too, like depression, trauma issues, and so on. So when they're doing this, they might be getting real excited through adrenaline rush to treat a depression, or they want to dissociate and not feel anything. So you see the slot users just there and they're in a trance. How long does it go? Until the money runs out, and then there's trouble. I mean, as long as the behavior can keep going, they can keep themselves medicated in a way. But there is a financial cost to it, as well as family costs and all sorts of impacts from the gambling that when those mount up, it will cause somebody to suddenly say, oops, someone's going to suddenly say, I can't do it anymore. It might get into legal problems, family problems, financial ruin.
We're going to show a clip here because it was just a few months ago, back in January, that the province's online gambling site went, quote unquote, live. And now, oh joy, Ontarians can gamble anywhere, anytime. Here's the OLG, Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. Here are some of the ads that are making the rounds. Let's roll it, please.
Feel the excitement of slots and casino games online. Anytime, any place in Ontario. Play OLG.ca. It's on.
What's not to love about that? Looks like so much fun. It's a slick ad. Certainly makes you feel like you're on the top of the world with your buddies. Is that what it's like? Is that a realistic portrayal of what gambling will do for you?
Gambling online will do for you, or just gambling in general?
Well, you tell me.
Well, I know that I've been in several different casinos at different times. And not been my experience. I'm sure that might be for some people, but not.
Okay, casino is a more public place. There's
Yeah.
lots of lights. It's sis boom ba, a lot of stuff going on. How about in your basement on your laptop?
Probably not. I wouldn't anticipate that would give you, that same excitement. And definitely, when we look at people from the research, when we look at people who do online gambling, that do develop a problem with it, a lot of times they're doing it to escape from, problems. They're doing it to avoid, feelings of loneliness, feelings of, again, boredom is different, but, feelings of anxiety and depression. So yeah, that doesn't kind of give that same sort of image, right, if that's what they're using it for.
I get how if you're lonely, going to a casino and seeing lots of people and it's it can be a fun atmosphere. That can do something to make you feel less lonely. How does being alone with your laptop in your basement, gambling, make you feel less lonely?
Well, you're just saying laptop. In 21st century, we're in tablet land, in mobile land. We can be gambling on all sorts of different things. And how does it make you less lonely? As before, if you're using it to escape something, self-medicate by dissociating or putting up, it's like even before this went live, people are always checking sports scores, people who are betting, and they're always looking at it. I see many people in my office because I deal with technological overuse as well. And we're seeing all the hidden gambling already there. So now it's like the official gambling site. They have competition with all the video games and so on that are doing very similar things. How is it helping them feel less lonely? Just diverting them through these activities. But what's interesting about like whether you play solitaire on your computer versus your iPhone or Android is that solitaire, you're not betting money. There is a certain thrill and excitement and danger and stress when you put something of value on the line. And this is the difference between just playing a normal game with whatever that means, without a financial stake, versus these, which can hook people. And just looking at that video, it just reminds me too about not just gambling, it's people just, there's two friends walking around and he's playing. Why isn't he talking to his friends? I don't know. It reminds
he's gambling.
me. He's gambling.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing about social situations, like why isn't he being social with his friends? Who is he actually playing with right there? And again, there's nothing wrong with gambling if it doesn't become a problem. That's something we always say. It's like we're about responsible gambling, healthy gambling, but when it crosses a line where it starts to impact a person, affecting him in some way, then we're into trouble.
Okay, I get that, but Brenda, and I don't want to be overly moralistic about here, but the OLG is a public organization. It's owned by the government of Ontario, the people of Ontario. The government makes a lot of money from people gambling. I mean, between $1 and $2 billion every year. Do you have something to say about the morality of a government depending on its people, frankly, overdoing it in order to help balance the books?
I think, as a government organization, as a crown corporation, they definitely have a responsibility to keep gambling safe. There's no doubt about that. And there's definitely safety features that they can put in place. Absolutely.
Like what? Follow up on that. What safety features are in place?
Well, they do have some safety features that they have put in place. They could probably put more in my opinion, but they definitely ask people to set limits on how much they can spend, how much time they would be able to spend online. They can push a stop button if they end up feeling like they need to take a break. So there's other features that are also there, but I mean there's a lot of things that aren't there. So one of the concerns for me, as somebody who works with people who have a gambling problem, is the fact that we don't know if somebody is drinking and using drugs while they're playing online, and that's definitely going to distort or impact the level of how much they're going to gamble and their decision making. So those are some concerns. Definitely there's a concern with the government getting into this type of online gambling. There's a period of time where they didn't want to be involved.
Well, there was a period of time when they wouldn't let you buy an Irish sweepstakes ticket.
Right.
I mean, days, that's 40 years behind us, and now not only does the government not mind, they're dependent on people gambling as much as possible in order to help balance the books. I think 5% of the people represent 30% of gambling revenues. It's a big deal. Now, I know, Bruce, they say know your limit, play within it. That's the slogan. But every time I see a commercial, I don't get the feeling that there's a lot of people who know their limit and want to play within it. I mean, that's not what they seem to be promoting.
Clinically speaking, and the people who I see running into difficulties, you can only find your limit after you've gone past it.
Right.
And then it's too late. So it does get back to know your limit, but how do you find that out? And so, yeah, it's an interesting slogan.
Interesting slogan. Ontario's in it. BC, Manitoba, Quebec, Alberta looking to get into it. Particularly of interest to Alberta, given what's happening to the price of oil these days. This is not going away, right? More and more provinces are going to get into it. Is this a cautionary tale?
Well, there's two things. One trouble is the government often works in segments and silos in the sense, here's the gambling, here's healthcare, here's the justice system. We don't know the true costs overall. It's like, yeah, 1.2 billion here, but how much if we actually had the ability to look at how much is costing healthcare, how much is it costing the justice system? Are we actually making more or actually losing? Many countries have outlawed gambling for their own inhabitants. They let tourists gamble, but they have learned, no, it actually destroys the infrastructure around. There's lots of research coming out, and there's many different controversies around it, that when you put casinos in a place, suicide rates go up, crime rates go up, all sorts of things start to happen. So the overall impact needs to be taken into account. I just want to say, too, look what we're doing with tobacco nowadays in Ontario. I think gambling is just, we're here talking about it now. Hopefully, I think in 10, 15 years, they'll be saying, oh, warning labels need to be coming on here too. It has a potential to be addictive. It can do these things, but they're not doing that yet.
But having said that, Brenda, now, I mean, the statistics show that the average gambler in Ontario spends about $1,000 a year. So we're talking, less than $100 a month.
Right.
For many people, that's not an outrageous amount of money, and they can handle that, and that's not a problem for them. You can't really make policy for the 5% who are going to be in trouble if 95% of the people who do it properly and fine and don't have any problems don't have any problems. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, in the sense that, I think that's one of the things to look at is that the majority of Ontarians do gamble safely and responsibly. I think that the concern with online gambling is that the statistics for online gamblers is 3 to 4 times higher as when we look at problem gambling for those online gambling. So that becomes a concern. I mean, and again, the research is still out on that. There still needs to be more research done. But, we're not sure if actually online gambling is becoming a place where more problem gamblers are just accessing. Is that why the statistic is so much higher? So you're looking at some statistics throughout Canada. When we look at problem gambling, it's about 4.9%. And for online gambling, it's 17.1%. So that's significantly higher.
You ever do it?
Gamble?
Online gamble.
No, I have not.
Haven't
Online
tried it?
gambled yet, no.
Bruce, tried it?
Just through some virtual games and seen that sort of thing, like virtual poker with not real poker things, but again, not this. Not interested.
Not interested?
No.
You haven't tried it yet either?
Have not tried it, no.
I mean, are you curious about it?
I am not. I'm not
Really?
curious about it at all. I mean, I'm curious and to kind of just see how the setup is. I'm not curious and wanting to fill out all the forms that you have to fill out just to be able to do it. Not something that kind of, I think I see the destructive part of gambling enough that it really has cured me from ever having some sort of lure or attachment to wanting to do it. So,
What is it, what does a lonely person lack that a person who's not lonely has that they don't know when to say when?
I think accountability, right? I mean, I think one of the things too, when we look at people who have a gambling problem online that are lonely, they're not obviously having somebody that's checking in with them, and they don't have any stoppers. Potentially, they're feeling better when they're doing it. And I think the other thing that also makes it a real concern and why it's important for the province to set in some real safety nets and some guidelines is one of the things that we know about gambling is that it's very secretive. It can be very hidden. If I go out tonight and I spend my whole mortgage on gambling, nobody has to know until the bank comes and says, we got a problem here, and that happens. If different than if I were to come home drunk tonight, somebody in my family is going to be like, that's not going to happen again. What we do know is it's even more hidden online. And so that also becomes a concern because where it's actually affecting is, it's the individual. If they're getting themselves into a problem, that's one thing. It's very devastating for them. What we're often hearing and what I see is when working with family members, they're usually hear about it when it's too late. They hear about it, and they're shocked. Probably the most common word we hear is devastation, is what this has created for me. So,
Bruce, last word to you on this. What separates those who are lonely and don't know when to say when from those who can figure that out?
Well, as Brenda was saying too, it's a healthy factor to have community, people who care about you, and so on. It's just a natural health factor for many people. I believe isolation and loneliness affects you in many different ways. So it's not just the gambling, it affects your mood and so on, which all can tie into why gambling could become a treatment for the person until it becomes a curse.
Gotcha. Thanks to the two of you for coming in and helping us out with this.
Yeah.
Brenda Teasel, problem gambling therapist and trainer at CAMH. Dr. Bruce Ballon, Associate Professor, Public Health and Psychiatry, U of T. Appreciate it, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.